Welcome to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank Studio. Hope you're having a great day as we continue to celebrate all the people who are working so hard to make Mississippi such a great place to live, work, and play. Now, listen, one of the things that you need to be aware of if you're a longtime coast resident who's kind of dropped your guard recently as it relates to tropical systems, or if you're new to the area, this is a show you're really going to want to pay attention to, because we're going to be joined now by Stephen McCraney, who's the executive director for MEMA. And we're going to talk about hurricane preparedness. We're going to spend a little bit of time at the beginning actually talking about what the experts are saying about this season as well. Without any further ado, let me welcome Stephen back to the Ricky Matthews Show. How you doing, my friend?
Hey, doing great, Ricky. Thanks for having us on today.
It's good. Hey, look, I'll do this quick. I won't go through every single one of them, but I have been since before Hurricane Katrina, but because I spent a lot of time offshore, I've been a bit of a weather nut. I'm a nerd. I'm a tropical weather nerd. Katrina made us pay even more attention. My family and I stayed at our house in Back Bay and had 10-foot waves hitting our house during Hurricane Katrina. So I know from personal experience what it feels like to be caught in an ultimate trap during a hurricane, and I don't want anyone else to be put in that position again. But one of the things I did as a publisher is I paid a lot of attention from that point forward to what is it we need to do to better inform the public so that we don't have so many perish next time. One of the things we did at the Sun Herald, for a matter of fact, is we told the story of every single person who perished during Hurricane Katrina to try to understand what was the decision matrix they went through to decide to stay and ultimately not make it as a result of the decision they made. So I've paid a lot of attention. So if you go and look at the hurricane forecast that happened starting later last year and into this year, it's the National Meteorological Services, of course, the scientific agencies, and there's a lot of hurricane experts these days. There's the Tropical Storm Risk Group, the TSR, the Colorado State University that most people know, the MFR group out of France, University of Arizona, University of Missouri, North Carolina State University, University of Pennsylvania, AccuWeather. I mean, I could go on, Weather Tiger, the list goes on, but they all agree that this is going to be a hyperactive season. And if you look at some of the headlines, a lot of the headlines tend to say things like explosive. On top of that, you're looking at what people are beginning to really feel strongly about it. That's going to be an active Caribbean season. And when it's an active Caribbean season, it means it's going to be an active Gulf season. So the reality is, if you look at the percentages of a hurricane passing within a reasonable distance from the Mississippi Gulf Coast, some of those percentages are really, really high this year. So with all that said, we might as well just say it. I've never seen a situation where there's been so much alignment around estimating a hyperactive season. And on top of that, when you look at the main development region in the Atlantic, we're looking at sea surface temperatures that are higher than anything ever recorded for this time of year. So that, combined with lots of other climatological issues that we need to pay attention to, it looks like it's going to be pretty busy. That's been your main message coming into this season, hasn't it?
It has. They say there's probably 23 members on this team that are going to play this year. 23 storms, 11 of them hurricanes, and 5 majors. So what our main message is for anyone in a coastal lower third of the state. I mean, we saw Katrina, it affected all 82 counties. And it just takes one. That's my number, is one is all it takes. And learned that from one of the directors at the National Hurricane Center. He used to call me personally, and he would tell me, hey, you know what's going to happen in Bay St. Louis, right? I mean, because he came from the New Orleans Weather Center. So we have embraced it at MEMA over the years from Katrina. Our ability, the science factors thereof, looking at now, the National Weather Service has surge models that we're looking at. So Harrison County and others down on the coast have redone their evacuation maps to put those out. I've got some great emergency managers in the lower 6 counties, and they are ready. And if you don't think that we're looking at it, you've got to understand that we've done training exercises on contraflow with the Mississippi Department of Transportation. We've done points of distribution pod training with the Mississippi National Guard out there in the local area, making sure the trucks can fit. The traffic patterns are good. We've been working with Department of Marine Resources. You name it. If there's a state agency, Department of Public Safety, if you're going to have a part in this event, we have totally rehearsed all of our plans, made sure that we've got everything available, every tool in the toolbox that we might need when this event happens. And now we're concentrating. I was just down at the Ground Zero Museum in Waveland a couple of weeks ago, and I was able to talk to some people, as you alluded to earlier, that just moved here. They've been here for about 6 or 7 months, or were here last summer, where we didn't necessarily have the hurricane tropical storm issues. Very lucky last year. And just trying to remind them that you've got to be prepared. Know what your neighbor's doing. Watch what your neighbor's doing. I mean, it's a full approach to being prepared, being ready, having a plan. Your family knowing your plan. They know where you're going to go when you leave, and when they can expect you back, and even in the neighborhoods there. So it's been a full court press for us to get everybody ready, because one's all it takes, and then we're ready to respond.
And we'll break it all down here in a second, but Colorado State University is always good. They always have a disclaimer, and it comes back to your point. As with all hurricane seasons, they say coastal residents are reminded that it only takes one hurricane making landfall to make it an active season. Thorough preparation should be made every season, regardless of predicted activities. So even though a lot of the experts say this is going to be a hyperactive season, it doesn't matter if they say that or not. The reality is we should all be prepared and should be thinking through what that looks like. And what we're going to do in this show today is we're going to start to break all that down. You heard the term contraflow a few minutes ago. We'll tell you what that's involving, et cetera. So listen, when you're talking to someone who's new to the area, I think probably one of the most important areas to think about to begin with is that it's important for people to know where they are. What level of preparedness should they be at based on where they live? So there are some areas that are going to have mandatory evacuations, or other areas that may not. But the reality is the most important thing is to understand that water kills more people than the wind does. We know that for a fact. Unfortunately, Mississippi has had too much experience with that. But knowing what your elevation is and knowing what zone you're in is critical, isn't it, Stephen?
It absolutely is. We can't. The first day of Hurricane Week was know your risk. Know the risk where you are. The roads. You might be okay, but the roads to get out are not going to be. They're going to flood early, and you're not going to be able to get out. Medication, that personal preparedness of your own situation, and even people will tell me, well, I've got plenty of food, I've got water, a gallon for everybody for every day for the first 3 to 4 or 5 days, and I'm good to go. And I say, you have a can opener? And they go, well, yeah. I said, is it plugged in the wall? Well, yeah. I said, well, you're not going to have electricity. Yeah. How are you going to open that food source? And that gets them to thinking, well, what else did I forget? Know your insurance. Know what you are and are not insured for. That you can try to mitigate some of the damage that's going to happen. So it really comes down to the personal family, that situation, the extended family, to make sure grandparents, elderly, everyone has a plan. Everybody knows where the other one's going, and then how do we connect when after 3 or 4 days, you don't have a source to charge your cell phone. You might ought to write some basic phone numbers down and have them in a little memo pad, because you might have to borrow someone else's phone to call and contact. I've got a lot of people in my phone that I just pick out their name and it dials, but do I really know their number? That's something that we've just gotten used to. The technology is there. So when technology is not there, what do you do? And that's something you really have to plan for.
You really, really do. Hey, listen, you mentioned about elderly and connecting with people. In the series of stories we did after Hurricane Katrina, where we talked about what were the decisions that people made What we found was, and of course, this is a big learning from Hurricane Katrina, and this is no longer a major issue. But at the time, where people would evacuate to, some of the centers, many of them did not accept pets.
Right.
And so people stayed home to protect their pets and died as a result of it. That's a tough one to think about. But we have to learn from our experiences, and that's one we learn from, isn't it?
Absolutely. Pets are part of the extended family. I've got a couple of dogs at the house, and if I go, they're going to go with me. So once we start putting out those notices, have a to-go kit of food, even in water for the pet, whatever type it might be. We've seen evacuations of horses, goats here to the Coliseum in Jackson. I mean, there are multiple shelters now, and we've worked through this over the years, that will accept pets, certain ones. So that's something that will definitely be broadcast as we start to open those shelters, and you can get to one. So be ready and be prepared.
We're going to continue our conversation about hurricane prep as the season approaches when we come back. We'll see you after this. Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank studio. I have with me today the executive director for MEMA here in Mississippi, Stephen McCraney. It's a busy time of the year for him. Listen, today is the 15th. So what's happening today is that on this day, the tropical weather outlooks start to be issued by the National Hurricane Center. That's about always 2 weeks prior to the season starting. Season starting on June the 1st, ending on the 30th. So if you go back and look at where subtropical and tropical cyclogenesis has happened, it's occurred about 97% of it has occurred between those days, June 1st and November the 30th. That doesn't mean that we won't have a storm before then. It doesn't mean we won't have a storm after November the 30th, but that's where the majority of them are. And it gives us a set of dates to work toward as people begin to prepare. And it gives people like Stephen McCraney the opportunity to hit the road to, the goal at the end of the day is to save lives. I mean, your focus is on saving lives, isn't it?
Absolutely. That's the number one priority. And that's we've been to the coast a couple of times already in all of our training events. Like I said, I was in Waveland, Ground Zero, and that really kind of brings a huge master storm like we had with Katrina back to the forefront. It really reminds you of how painful it was as me as a responder with the military, the National Guard. That was my occupation at that time, coming down and just trying to put everything back together. So this is an opportunity, and you mentioned that all the new Mississippians we have. I mean, it's able to let them know. And if you've got a next door neighbor that moved here from New York, Michigan, California, wherever it might be, let them know what we have. I mean, California, they've got earthquakes. They can talk to us about that. But let's talk to them about one of the major events that could change the demographics in their family and other things, and just have them know and make a plan, and then assist them through that. And you alluded to earlier that Katrina was one of those. We evacuated the coast, then we came back. Okay, next storm kind of came through, we evacuated, came back, and people were boarding up windows every time. And the last time with Katrina, it's not going to hit. Well, that's the one. That is the one. So if you're going to get out of the way, figure out what your level, tropical storm, if it's a slow mover, you've got a lot of flood water. You've got a lot of surge that's going to be there with you that maybe a fast-moving hurricane wouldn't even do. I mean, but figure out where the impact of a Cat 1, Cat 2, Cat 3 might be, and what's your magic number? If it's a tropical storm to get out, because I do know people on the coast that if it's a tropical storm, I'm moving. And we definitely plan for that. And a lot of people don't know that the city of Hattiesburg's population triples when we have that. So we've got to look at on the government and the response side, how do we get more law enforcement, more medical into that city, because it is jam-packed. Every single hotel.
So one of the analog years, they look what the experts do is, and you know this, Stephen, well, but for the audience, they look at when conditions are similar, La Nina and all the warm water and et cetera, they look at what are other years that compared that to. One of the years they compared it to was 1998. And what made me think of it was you talked about sometimes there are slow moving storms and sometimes they move right through. But Hurricane Georges, I'll never forget it, sat on top of my house. And we were in the eye for 13 hours. I mean, literally, I left my house and went to the Sun Herald and checked on things and went back to my house during the eye of the storm. While up north of us, my sister-in-law was up in a community up in North Harrison County. They were getting literally creamed with pine trees hitting their houses and that entire time. You never know what the situation is going to be. You don't know. It could stall. It could move fast. It could have lots of storm surge. It may not. Yep. One of the things that A.J. Holloway, the former mayor of Biloxi, was famous for saying that Hurricane Camille killed more people in 2005 than it killed in 1969. And the reason, and that's a really important lesson, the reason is because people made decisions to stay for Camille because they survived Katrina. You can never base your decisions on past experience because every storm has unique characteristics that could literally create new headlines, which is exactly what happened with Hurricane Katrina. But that's an important message, isn't it?
It is, and you've got to look at how much the coast has grown just over the past 5 to 6 years. All that construction, the new roads and everything, it changes the flow and the demographic of the water. Where it might used to flow very well, that now it's got obstacles and it's slowing it down even further. And you hit the nail on the head with if you just look at the severe weather we've had over the past 3 months. Every spring, you're in Mississippi, it's going to be that type of weather. Hurricane tornadoes are going to spin off. I mean, and you're right. When it sits down and slows down, I do not like a slow hurricane. Don't like any hurricanes, but the slow ones really present the biggest drag on all types of response. And what people need to understand, if you wait too late and you don't get out of harm's way, there is a point where the first responders we're going to save our own lives so we can respond and save others. We're going to have to get to our safe place, and there's going to be a time when 911 will answer the phone, but we will not be able to send someone to get you until it's safe for that responder to get out there, because our vehicles are the same as yours. I don't have a motorboat on the back of mine. I've got to be able to travel. The fire personnel, the rescue, we've got those teams very well trained in the state of Mississippi. The task force is just an awesome machine made up of first responders all throughout the state that come down and assist and go and do. But there'll be a time when 911, we cannot respond. Just like the linemen putting lines back up for electrical, there's that windage gets up, we can't. We've got to be able to save our lives so we can get out there. So,
Stephen, it broke our hearts during Katrina. We were listening on the radio, and then of course WLX did a good job of covering the storm as well. As calls were coming into the emergency center from people on the point of Biloxi who had already moved into their attics.
Yes.
And they were just begging for somebody to come and help them. But see, in this particular case, you had fire departments that were literally trying to save their own lives. They were taking on water. And unfortunately, too many people in that situation didn't survive. But this is the kind of situation you find yourself in. If you choose to stay and you get inundated, you're going to be in a situation where you're going to have to take care of yourself for a long period of time, because the reality is there is a moment where emergency crews are not going to be able to go out and help you. This is the point that you were making. Hey, listen, I want to make one other really critical point. Again, in the series that Sun Herald did after Hurricane Katrina, looking at reasons why people decided to stay, one of the more heartbreaking parts of this was elderly people who didn't have relatives local. So in other words, they didn't have someone here to maybe they didn't have anyone at all, but in lots of cases, family members lived somewhere else. And so they didn't have family members here to urge them to get out. That's an area where we as a set of communities need to be very aware. This is the point that you were making about knowing about your neighbors and understanding your neighbor's situation. urging your neighbors to get out, helping them think about what their plan needs to be. The time to think about these things is not when a storm is barreling down on coastal Mississippi. It's understanding now what is your plan going to be. But it was heartbreaking to see how many elderly people died who unfortunately didn't have someone to urge them to get out, and they thought they would just ride it out. We've got to do a better job at really reaching out to our neighbors, don't we?
It does, and the community. We have this thing. It's the whole community. It starts local and it ends local. The big machine that we're going to be able to turn on with FEMA, MEMA, and all of those governmental response agencies, the National Guard and others. We can turn that on. It's going to take us about 72 hours to get probably to you personally. And that's because we're moving in water, we're moving food, we're assessing roads, we're trying to clear debris out. I remember during Katrina, we had the Corps of Engineers with bulldozers, and we were just getting it off the road so we could simply go put out a fire. We had a lot of the debris and the stuff from the ocean comes in, and it caught on fire, and we thought we were going to burn down Biloxi at one time. So we've got to get those basic services back up, and we're going to be ready for it. But you've got to have a plan. You've got to be able to know where. If your neighbor doesn't come back in 2 days, know where to contact them, so you don't worry about it. The mental health part of this is one that is so important to know. Well, Jimmy and Sandra were across the street, and they're not back. I wonder where they were. I mean, and you keep wondering, and then you keep looking, and then you keep looking in the obituary. So it's just that is the mental health side of just knowing what the person to your left, your right, across the street, what their plan is, and tell them what your plan is. And I think that, in a nutshell, local community, just knowing and having that plan, and just don't not have a plan. That's a bad way to say that. Have your personal plan.
I cannot agree more. And now the time to prepare is right now. So
yes, sir.
Listen, when we come back with Executive Director of MEMA, Stephen McCraney, we'll continue to talk about kind of things you need to be thinking about as we approach the hurricane season. We'll see you after this. Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show. We're visiting with Stephen McCraney, who's the Executive Director for MEMA here in Mississippi Emergency Management Agency.
Yes,
and someone who has been incredibly engaged, always is. MEMA, as a general rule, is big time engaged this time of year. But we learn more. We have new people in new positions all over the place. We have lots of coordinating that needs to happen. And I remember one of the things that we wrote at the Sun Herald. Remember a headline about 3 or 4 days after the storm that says, "Help us now." And what we saw was this lull for, first day, then the second day, then the third day. And the point that Haley Barbour, when he finally made it to the Sun Herald and we had the opportunity to talk, was the storm was so big and so destructive that a lot of the pre-positioning that MEMA and others did, that pre-positioning was wiped out. You guys had to really kind of start from scratch in a lot of respects. That's one of the reasons why you say, you need to prepare for several days. Don't assume that the next day somebody's going to come in and save you. That's not the way it works, is it, Stephen?
Yeah, the team I was with, we left out of Crystal Springs, deploying down there about day 2. And we literally had to cut our way through trees on the Highway 27 and 28, trying to get to 49. And the Department of Transportation was cutting. They cut some of the trees a little too close, and I scraped the sides off of some of my trailers that we were bringing down equipment in. So, the first responders had to work our way through storm debris to actually get to the coastal areas that were impacted worse. So that's why we say first 72 is on you. If you're going to stay, but 72 hours is a rough go when there's no water, no electrical, you can't even drive your car out because of trees on it, or the roads are blocked. You're not getting out, and nobody's working at Walmart. I mean, those services aren't there. Your medications, have those filled, have all your bottles ready, and your to-go kit. At least if you get out of town, you can get that prescription refilled if you have that bottle, not just the day planner with ones you're going to take every day. but have that prescription with you. It's very, very, very important. And we've come up with some different guides. We've got one that I think the staff did it for me. It's MEMA's Disaster Preparedness Guide for older adults, because I like writing down contact numbers that are in the back. Everybody that you might need that service, but it kind of gives you an idea. It's not a big, thick read, but it's a very important tool, and we've distributed those. It's on our website, of course, but it's also, we've given that out to the emergency managers on the coast, the coastal counties and whatnot, because they wanted to distribute those out. But it's almost like if you go to the grocery store hungry, what are you going to do? You're going to buy the cookies, the sweet things, the immediate things that you want to eat right then. But if you make that list, you're going to remember to get the washing powder. You're going to remember to get cleaning solutions. You're going to remember to get those things that you were actually low on. So this disaster guide is just that. It's the list. It's the things to think about. Do you have them? Do you have just a bag with everything you would need to put on and put it in the trunk of your car to get out of town if you make a decision too late that you need to go? So we've been through this a lot, and we want to protect from the young to the old, from those that are like some of us used to be, stubborn. But after responding to these year after year after year, it comes to a point that we just want to save your life. I will rebuild the bridge. The roads will be rebuilt. We will do all those things. Your house can be rebuilt, but that family member that stayed with a pet, we now have shelters that can take care of that for you. Come on, the Highway Patrol, they've got helicopters, so does the National Guard. We're going to be flying the highways. We're going to be looking for that person that broke down. Maybe their car is not 300-mile worthy. Maybe it's one they just commute back and forth to work. And, well, I'm not leaving because my car will break down. Well, you start calling that local emergency manager. We're going to get you in contact with someone. But if you break down out there, we're going to get you out of that situation and get you to the safest, nearest shelter we can get you to.
Well, it's important to think these things through. Know what your elevation is, what evacuation zone you're in. It's important to know where you're going. So if you've got family or friends north of here or west or east, depending on what the scenario might be, have those relationships, nailed down, understand what your goal is going to be once you get into that situation. I had the opportunity. I was the president publisher of the Times-Picayune and NOLA.com in New Orleans, so I became very familiar prior to leaving the coast to be publisher over there with Contraflow. But for people who have not heard the word Contraflow, this is a really important issue, because if you've thought about leaving and Contraflow coming out of New Orleans has been opened up, it could affect your ability to go where you want to go. So why don't you kind of give people a sense of what Contraflow is?
So the governor of Louisiana and the governor of Mississippi have made a pact, and it's at the 36-hour mark. That is the latest we will ever open Contraflow. And there's been some times where we've gotten under that 36-hour because I've got to deploy. The state of Mississippi will deploy Department of Transportation folks to take I-55 and other 59 other highways that normally run south. You got a north and south corridor there. Everything's going north now. So you figure out how to get that rural highways that we have that you're going to have to travel. If you think you're going south, it's not going to be that way for a good period of time as we open that up. And then the petroleum production side of the house, they're looking at how do they get down there and refill all the gas stations, because you need to have that full tank coming out. Don't just leave with 1/8 of a tank. That you're going to need it, but gas is going to go quickly. But we do have a way. We've studied it. We've trained with the private sector to be able to ensure that we can get down there and refuel those stations so people can keep moving and keep moving north to get out of harm's way.
So, as I mentioned, there's a lot of coordinating that takes place. You've got the county and city level coordination. It's obviously hurricanes from a water point of view is very much a coastal event. But as you pointed out, in the case of Hurricane Katrina, it impacted this entire state. I remember in speeches that I would give with Haley Barbour after the storm, we would regularly show this satellite imagery of Mississippi the day after the storm where no lights were on or virtually no lights were
Right.
on. That's something to get your head around because that's the reality of what could happen. And people just don't think of it as that in those terms. They think of it only being a coastal impact, but that's not the way it works, is it?
No, you look at the historically over from Camille, even before that, till about 1958 to now. And as I've got a chart on my wall, I've got all 82 counties listed, and in every disaster or every tornado that happened, Katrina is one of the few. We'll call COVID a disaster as well, but Katrina was 82 counties. Public assistance because of all the winds, driving wind, driving rain, the flooding that it caused all the way through the top of the state. I mean, it just rode I-55 just straight, almost Memphis curved out. I mean, so it was a huge effect on the entire state of Mississippi, which, we've got a limited amount of resources, but we've already plugged in with the states left and right. We had tornadoes last year. Florida came and helped me on those. If they get hit first, we're definitely going to look to help them first. And that's the Region 4, the Southeastern Conference of Disasters for FEMA is what I call it. All those state directors, we've already had a meeting about 3 weeks ago where we all went to Atlanta and said, okay, what do you have because I don't have this military unit's deploying out, so maybe I don't have helicopter support like I normally do. Who's going to help me with that? So we've already shaken all that out, taken all the dust, and we've got it streamlined. We know exactly who needs what, and we're going to share it because it's the state-to-state help is tremendous when one of these big ones hits us.
Yeah, you see that like even in the private sector. You think about when I had the opportunity to visit with my friend Anthony Wilson from CEO of Mississippi Power Company, the work that the power and electric utility companies do to work together all across the nation. It's an amazing plan they have in place, isn't it?
Well, something we've done, there's only 14 states that has a business emergency operations center. So we have incorporated that into MEMA. Todd DeMuth runs that for us here. And if you look at the Rolling Fork tornadoes and Amory, 81 businesses signed in, and they were delivering water, medical supplies, ensuring things were moved when it needed to be. So they're a tremendous partner because the businesses are there because the people live there, and they want that to get back to as close to normal as they can. So that's been one of the biggest force multipliers for us, is including those businesses in on our plans. They know what the requests are, where it is, where it's coming from, and they just do a tremendous job of because their speed is a lot faster than the government speed.
The Rolling Forks tornado response regarding what you're talking about now was so good that a lot of nonprofits that would normally go there to serve food and whatever, they didn't need to go this time. They were it was so well coordinated. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation in the final segment with Stephen McCraney from MEMA. We'll see you after this. Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank studio. I have Stephen McCraney, Executive Director of MEMA, with us today, and we're talking about hurricane preparation. And there's a lot to think about. And so I think one of the things that if you're new to the area, of course, if you've been around here for a long time, you just need a quick reminder. MEMA has a terrific website, lots of stuff to think about there. You can go to the county websites. There is no shortage of information on the internet to help you prepare yourself. The bottom line is to get your checklist and begin to work your way through it. And as Stephen's pointed out many times during this conversation, you're going to be reminded of some basic stuff that you haven't thought about in a long time. And there's no reason to catch yourself in a situation where a storm is barreling down on coastal Mississippi and you don't have a plan. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what we need. Now, look, as we said many times, you said it, Colorado State always says it, all it takes is one. But all the experts are agreeing that this season may be an explosive season. We may be in a situation where we're dodging more than one storm this season. So it's important for you to recognize that resources could be drained we could be helping another state, or maybe we've been hit once before and we're getting hit again. That's happened multiple times across the Gulf Coast. This is all the more reason why you've got to have a plan. You've got to have your emergency supplies together. And as you said, you've got to take care of yourself for at least 72 hours, maybe beyond, but you can repeat yourself on that. We can't say that enough, can we?
No, we can't. And it's just the things we take for granted. If you pull up in a refrigerator and you're out of milk, hey, run, go get me some milk. I need that to bake a cake with or whatnot. None of that is going to be available. It's not. I mean, the people that run those places, they're getting out. They're moving. They're boarding up their stores. I mean, how long does a gas station stay open until they say, okay, now even the own people that are there, they've got to get out of harm's way. So that's you've got to be able to survive for 72 hours. You're on your own. And that is it's a hard thing for me to say because I've been a first responder since 1985, knowing that the dispatcher told me where to go and I would go and respond and do what needed to be done. But there's a point in time where we're not available. We have to make it the equipment that we need to do these rescues and the other stuff. We've got to keep it out of harm's way until we can deploy it down there. And that's Department of Wildlife is another one that I haven't rang the bell about in the search and rescue groups. They are those that stage further south than some of the others. But you hit on a very good point that if you deploy too far forward, then those supplies and those people are in harm's way, and we can't do the mission that we need to do. So our mission now is preparedness. Our mission now is get ready. We take an entire week. We get the governor to sign a declaration to put out, here's what you need to think about every day. But at the end, you say, it's just too much. I don't know what to do. Go to msema.org. We're the Mississippi Emergency Management Agency for you, every citizen. We've got some lists out there. We've got some nice that remind you of what do you do for a pet? What about your vehicle? Have you checked it? Have you made sure your tires are good? I mean, everything that you could think of is in that. The team here has just done such a wonderful job. In concert with the local emergency managers, we're all ringing the same bell. There's nobody out of tune on this one. We have been down and talked with them, distributing these pamphlets all throughout the coastal area. Your local emergency manager certainly has some, but also the website's there. If you just want to go and, hey, this is important. I didn't have that. This is one thing. So prepare now, and then it's going to be so much better when we do have, or that impact takes place.
So you may be listening to this on Super Talk or Super Talk TV. You might be watching on Facebook or YouTube or listening on your favorite podcast, however you're listening. If you know there are new people in your neighborhood who are not from here, find a way to text the show to them and ask them to listen to it. Listen, if someone is elderly and you don't have family living close to you, I would recommend that you reach out to your family wherever they are or friends wherever they are and engage them in your emergency process so as the hurricane or whatever the situation may be is affecting coastal Mississippi, that they know to reach out back to you and check on you to make sure that you're being taken care of, because don't take anything for granted, man. The most important thing, as Stephen McCraney pointed out, we can replace physical structures. Yep. But we can't replace lives. And the number one focus for now is preparation as it relates to saving life. I mean, that's where a lot of the focus needs to be, isn't it?
And we've got a new hurricane guide out this year, and it's a pamphlet that folds open as two pieces of paper, but then it folds out to be everything that you can think of. But it's even got the evacuation map on it. So the little highway that you think that you ride down every day, and you wave at 3 other cars for 30 miles, guess what? There's going to be a lot more vehicles on that road, and it's going to take you a lot longer to get there. So just take the opportunity. The coast has, like I said, those EM directors on the coast, very strong, been there for years and years. Love all of them. So they've got the copy of those guides. We've got it online. Just take an opportunity, just cut off a commercial, just read that for just a few minutes, and be prepared so we can all get there together.
Well, listen, Stephen, we'll have you back on again at some point. before things start to really heat up. And then as we get into a situation where we may be threatened, we'll have you back on as well to talk about
Absolutely.
what the situation is in that particular situation. So until then, it's been a pleasure to catch up with you.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Ricky.
You bet. This has been Stephen McCraney, Executive Director of MEMA. Have a great day, and we will see you tomorrow.